Could a horse that's never won a race win the Kentucky Derby? Let's talk publisher on this Spotlight series. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with another Kentucky Derby Contender Spotlight series. This one is on Steve Asmussen's maiden, Publisher. Very fun horse to talk about. But listen, before we do that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, specialty shows like this one, live streams, so much more. So press the like and subscribe button today. All right. Well, listen, folks, let's talk about a horse that's generated a lot of buzz. Dare I say a wise guy horse? We'll see about this. And that is Publisher. A horse that has never won a single race, not even against horses that have never won races, never against maidens. Yet he's going to try to win the Kentucky Derby. Nobody's done this in a very, very long time. There have been some horses that have done it. If you go back in the 1910s, you've seen some horses do it back kind of then. But no, this is not a common trait to see. And it's not common for maidens to even make it to the Kentucky Derby, let alone then win the Kentucky Derby. So we got to talk about it because he's an interesting horse. There are things to like about Publisher for sure. As a horse, I'll be honest, I'm going to kind of tip my hand from the outset. I don't see it. I think a lot of people are reaching to try to be smart, and I think that can get them in trouble sometimes. When you try to be the smartest person in the room, you often end up not being it. Trust me, I've been there myself, so I speak from experience, not to cast stones. But let's talk about Publisher a little bit as a horse that trained by Steve Asmussen, who is still in search of his first Kentucky Derby victory. The winningest trainer in North American history has never won the Kentucky Derby. Then you have jockey Irad Ortiz Jr., who an amazing jockey, but doesn't always show up in the Kentucky Derby in terms of having great mounts and great rides. And it's interesting that he ends up here on Publisher. Now, listen, the horse is sired by Triple Crown winner American Pharoah, who I got to see last week at Coolmore. He is a specimen when you see him in person. He is absolutely a specimen. He's impressive. I was a little more impressed by Justify, to be honest, when I saw them, basically back to back. But American Pharoah's produced some outstanding horses. He's got two offspring in this race between this and Luxor Cafe, the Japanese horse. And listen, you have some proud citizen influence underneath. Now, like I said, the horse is still a maiden, but the way he got into the Kentucky Derby is because he finished second in the Arkansas Derby. By finishing second in that one race, he managed to accumulate 50 points, and that was enough to put him into the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby. But let's talk a little bit more about the sort of trip he needs and kind of how he's going to run at his best. He's a fascinating horse because he really has two races that may be good enough to give you hope. One is that Arkansas Derby, which we're going to get to. The other is his maiden runner-up finish 4 races ago in December at Oak Lawn Park over a muddy sealed track going a mile and a 16th. He ran a 92 Beyer speed figure that day and was beaten by, and this is important, American Promise. American Promise goes on to win the Virginia Derby, and American Promise, it ends up being an interesting horse in the Kentucky Derby as a result. American Promise for D. Wayne Lucas, I'm not sure there was a better looking horse I saw all week when I was in Kentucky leading up to this race. American Promise is a legitimate horse, and Publisher finished second to him that day. Then goes to the Southwest, doesn't get a great trip under Eric Asmussen. Then goes to the Rebel, and again doesn't get the best trip with Flavian Pratt up. They put the blinkers on last time out. Pratt aboard, and really the horse starts to make a little bit more of a run in that Arkansas Derby. Ultimately can't really get there to Sandman. That said, Sandman's weaving around in the lane. There was no way I'd have thought Publisher was going to get by, but it might have affected him a little bit in terms of just maybe help reinforce leveling off a little bit, as Sandman was kind of all over the place a little bit in Publisher's line. But like I said, not to an egregious extent that I would think it would be anything that should be looked at by the stewards in that regard. But what you see from Publisher is those are the only two efforts, that Arkansas Derby and that maiden second place effort, both runner-up finishes. Those are the only two races that are even in the ballpark of being good enough to win this race. Okay, you're going to need 100-plus buyer speed figure to win the Kentucky Derby. I know Mystic Dan won it last year with a 99, but most years you need 100-plus buyer speed figure to win the Kentucky Derby. He's going to need to progress. And it's not as if he's a lightly raced maiden. It's not as if he has 3 races. It's not as if he's Grande. Now, Grande's not a maiden, but Grande had 3 races under his belt, finished second in the Wood Memorial. Now, granted, he won his first 2 starts, but he didn't accumulate any Kentucky Derby points for those, and then goes and finishes second in 1 prep race and now is in the Derby. You could look at a horse like Grande and go, hey, there's some projection there. This horse could keep getting better, only going into his 4th race. He's already shown the ability to win a race. That would be nice. Publisher, he's gotten 7 starts. He was running in the 60s, then got on a sloppy or a muddy track, stretched out, got a big number, then regressed a little bit in the Southwest, improved slightly in the Rebel, and then kind of ran back to his runner-up maiden form in the Arkansas Derby where he was runner-up again. The problem with Publisher is he a deep closer? I don't know. I think that's kind of what he's been forced to do because of the pace scenario. And that's an important thing to bring up with the Arkansas Derby, is that pace in the Arkansas Derby was absolutely insane with Cornucopian and Speed King up front, okay? So he had a huge pace to run into. Now, he's probably going to have a big pace to run into come the first Saturday in May as well, as the Kentucky Derby typically has a really strong pace. So he could get the same sort of setup there, for sure. But I wonder if he's actually better off as a mid-pack horse, very similar to what he sat in his runner-up maiden effort against American Promise, where he sat kind of 2nd, 3rd, 4th throughout that race in an 8-horse field. I wonder if that's where he's actually at his best, and that's where maybe the blinkers would help. It was just that pace last time. That was so fast. And Pratt made the right decision to sit well off. But again, if Publisher finds himself in the back with Tistastic, Sovereignty, and some of the other really big, deep closers in this field, even a horse like, Final Gambit, or Flying Mohawk, or Chunk of Gold, I don't know if Publisher's better than those horses. I feel like he needs to have a little bit more of a tactical advantage to be able to sit a little bit closer than some of those horses and get the jump on some of those horses. Now, people are going to point out some workouts. Working out leading up to the Kentucky Derby, and that he outworked his stablemate, Tistastic, who is generally thought of as being a more polished entry in the Kentucky Derby. This is where I have to give a huge amount of credit to Matt Dinnerman, who is the track announcer at Oaklawn Park and got to see both of these horses regularly. And while everybody and their cousin was looking at the workout video of Publisher and Tistastic as if it was the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination, Matt came in and provided context. A lovely thing that so many clockers lack this time of year. He said, Publisher's always been a great workhorse. Tistastic's always been a bad workhorse. He goes, this is something I've seen for months, that Publisher will routinely get the best of Tistastic during morning workouts. Guess which one of those horses wins? Tistastic. Guess which one of those horses doesn't? When the races actually matter? Publisher. So they can look great in the morning. There's a lot of morning glories on the track. You see horses firing off 47-4 bullets, and they get to the race and they finish up the track. Now, I'm not saying that's Publisher, but morning works don't always translate to efforts in the afternoon. I think that's why, as much as I love workouts and looking at workouts, there's not always a one-to-one translation there. And you have to be very careful about that. I think that's where Publisher, it might end up being this wise guy horse that a lot of people are going to try to outsmart themselves. Like, oh no, this is actually Asmussen's horse. Asmussen is going to break the Kentucky Derby, winless streak with a maiden. And it would be a great story if that happened. And to be clear, this is a horse that has ability. Asmussen wouldn't put this horse in the race if he didn't think this horse had ability. The 95 Beyer speed figure in the Arkansas Derby was a good effort, but he got the absolute perfect pace meltdown and pace scenario and was sitting in the perfect spot for it, coming from well off the pace. I wonder about the trip you end up getting when you're coming from that far back. You're very post-dependent to some extent. And it's interesting. What is particularly interesting to me is that Flavien Prat gets off this horse. Flavien Prat was not guaranteed a ride in the Kentucky Derby for a long time. And Irad was named on this one, who's never ridden him before. Prat, you'd imagine, had an opportunity at least to stay on this horse. Maybe not. Maybe Steve really didn't want him on the horse. But Irad is not somebody Asmussen works with very often, so it was interesting that he went to him. And then that Prat was really in no man's land for a while and is named on Neo Equos now for Safi Joseph, although there's a good chance with Baeza as the also eligible, probably will get in. And if Baeza gets in, then Pratt's going to ride Baeza. So it's just very interesting to me to see the dynamics here leading up to this situation with Publisher. But listen, if you believe in the 92 and the 95, you believe in some of the other numbers maybe you see on Thoroughgraph, maybe you think this horse could move forward and maybe you think he can win. I just have a hard time thinking that a horse like this is going to suddenly make this incredible move forward to become a winner on the biggest stage. We've seen crazier things happen. We saw Rich Strike a few years ago, right? So these types of things can happen. But for me, Publisher is going to be a horse I stay away from. And I stay away from using him because I just don't have the confidence that he's going to be able to put it all together. I also think, and I am a little worried because he's a little bit of the wise guy horse, what price you're actually going to get on him. I could see him becoming a horse that is more in that 15-1 range. And I just don't want any part of him at 15-1. Now you give him to me at 35-1. Sure. I'd take a shot with, probably about half to 3/4 of the field at those odds, but I'm not willing to take a shot with him at 15-1 at odds where he's maybe the 7th or 8th choice on the board. I just don't see him as the 7th or 8th most likely winner of this race. Like I said, some people do. He's a horse that does have very varied opinions. So let me know what yours are. Interested to hear. But for me, Publisher's going to be off my tickets come Saturday, May 3rd. All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning into this Spotlight series. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Really appreciate everybody's support during this time of the year and throughout the Triple Crown season. Saratoga, the Breeders' Cup, we got you covered for all things horse racing and handicapping. Wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.